Welcome to the International Forum on One Korea. My name is Yechin Victor Lee. I'm a senior fellow for Northeast Asia Peace and Development at the Global Peace Foundation. I'm very honored to serve as the moderator of the opening session of today's forum. This forum is co-convened by the Global Peace Foundation, Blue Banner, and Action for Korea United, and the One Korea Foundation, under the theme, Free and Unified Korea, Northeast Asia Regional Collaboration on Denuclearization and Economic Integration. Today's virtual forum is the second convening of the ongoing International Forum on One Korea 2020 Virtual Forum Series that convene prominent scholars, policymakers, and civil society leaders from Korea and the global community to examine key issues, identify new opportunities, and develop collaborative efforts towards the free and unified Korea. Different from the inaugural convening on August 15, today we will have two concurrent Zoom webinars on two important topics of denuclearization and economic integration. This event is also built on the ongoing Ulaanbaatar International Roundtable on Northeast Asia Peaceful Development and Korean Unification, which recognize the unique role of Mongolia in dealing with these issues. Well, we have many esteemed experts to address these critical topics in these two roundtables. Many more people from around the world are participating as observers today. I want to thank all of our organizers, moderators, discussants, and observers for making special efforts to participate in this forum at such challenging time. To start us off, please welcome Mr. James Flynn, the International President of Global Peace Foundation in Washington, D.C.
Greetings from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the second convening of the International Forum on One Korea 2020 virtual series. The Global Peace Foundation is proud to join with Blue Banner, Action for Korea United, and the One Korea Foundation in organizing this important forum. The first convening of the International Forum on One Korea 2020 was held during Korea's National Liberation Day on August 15. As the series name indicates, the focus of discussions is One Korea, meaning the free and unified Korea that fulfills the aspirations of the Korean people as expressed in the 1919 March 1st independence movement. We are convening an international forum because we recognize both that the process of building the free and unified Korea must be Korean-led, and that it also requires vital international support. We greatly appreciate all who are participating today. Thank you, Ambassador Engstekan, Dr. Jae Ryu, and Mr. Intek So for your dedicated leadership in this joint effort. I also want to appreciate all the discussants who are contributing their valuable insights and expertise, as well as the participants of these two highly relevant roundtables. Given the current global upheaval and the impasse yet again on the Korean Peninsula, it is certainly time to consider new approaches on both denuclearization and regional economic cooperation in Northeast Asia. Building on the ongoing Ulaanbaatar International Roundtable, today's forum will examine fresh and important ideas, drawing from Mongolia's example and the Northeast Asia Nuclear Weapons-Free Zone proposal. We hope that today's discussions will stimulate new insights and further work that can contribute to the process of advancing a nuclear-free peninsula, along with robust regional economic integration supporting Korean unification. Over the past decade, the Global Peace Foundation and partners have been actively building momentum for Korean-led principled unification with international support based on the Korean Dream framework. as together we build a civil society movement to end the tragic division of the Korean Peninsula. We are motivated by the conviction that a unified Korea that upholds freedom, human rights, and the rule of law is not a distant dream, but an urgent, immediate priority. Again, thank you for participating in this important forum. We look forward to discussions today that are informative and stimulating, and that give impetus to fresh ideas that can contribute to concrete solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Now, let's welcome Mr. In-Tek So, co-president of the Action for Korea United.
Hello, everyone. Warm greetings from Seoul. Welcome to this virtual International Forum on One Korea. On behalf of Action for Korea United, I sincerely appreciate all of you, not only for your participation, but your constant research and advocacy effort to bring peace and unification to my homeland, Korea. As you know, the unification of Korea is a long-cherished dream for all Korean people, since the tragic division became an agony and wound. Ironically, the very pain stimulated the Korean people to walk many more extra miles last 70 years. It made Koreans to be hardworking people. The people power, the collective effort to make the miracle of Han River out of the ashes of the Korean War. When we overview the situation of the peninsula today, in many aspects, we realize now is the time to move our energy and collective effort to the unification, which is the theme of today's forum. The Action for Korea United, led by the leadership of Dr. Hyunjin Preston Moon, is making effort in grassroots level to let people know the unification is not a distant dream anymore, but it can become an achievable reality, depend on our effort. We dream the future unified Korea to be a nation upholding the fundamental human rights and freedom, and realize the aspiration of 5,000 years of Korean history. The nation must be a benefit to not only Koreans, but the world of peace and prosperity. I'm glad that we are working together for this goal. So I hope the discussion today contribute for our common goal. I wish good ideas and wisdom out of a box, new perspective thinking to be shared today. Once again, thank you so much for your participation. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. So. Now, let's welcome Dr. Jae Poong Liu, founder of the One Korea Foundation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the 2020 International Forum on One Korea. Thank you for your continuing interest in and keeping high hopes for the future of the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. Now, I will share with you a few opinions I now hold related to the topic of this conference. And I will appreciate it if you would bear in mind in your discussions. My first point is that our search for denuclearization and economic integration should be pursued along with the unification of the Korean Peninsula. Our efforts for denuclearization, peninsula unification, and regional economic integration are not three separate goals, but three interconnected and interdependent facets of the same vision. Second point is that about the type of unification we want for the people of Korea and of the larger region. That will be free, democratic, and prosperous. With no doubt, united Korea that may not uphold basic human rights like religious freedom for everyone is not the country we want. People of one united Korea will be governed by the Constitution, approved in an internationally supervised national plebiscite. No individual, no political party, no group of any persuasion shall be allowed to act above the Constitution and the rule of law. Third, Many recent and ongoing signs are raising questions about the stability or even the very survival of the Kim family regime in North Korea. In all dictatorial power systems, smooth, orderly succession of power is very unlikely or non-existent. Furthermore, KFR is facing these issues amid the ongoing trade and financial sanctions, rapid sequence of natural disasters like typhoons and floods, and regime-made disasters like drought and global harvest, and now the COVID-19 pandemic. Out of these situations may emerge, however, conditions favorable for our kind of unification, like a rise of a collective leadership that could open and reform North Korea to a point to real negotiation with South Korea for the real final unification of the peninsula. Fourth, when and if political instability of KFR becomes apparent and the future direction of that country becomes baffling, we may examine a case for guidance. This is a very important point. Mongolia is a case in point. Mongolia became a communist state in 1924, second only to the former Soviet Union. Mongolia transitioned to democracy in 1990, before the fall of the Berlin Wall or the subsequent collapse of USSR. Mostly Mongolian youth, leading through peaceful demonstration and hunger strikes, forced the communist regime to resign without bloodshed and forced them to move to market economy. North Korea can neither copy nor follow Mongolian model, but we can examine various parts of the Mongolian revolution and use and apply where possible for our use. In closing, I wish to add, One Korea Foundation I represent has recently signed an agreement with GPF to co-sponsor this forum for the next 3 years. In addition to GPF, I'm also very happy to work with my old friends of the Blue Banner and AKU in advancing our shared goals and values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Finally, let's welcome Ambassador Jay Engskan, Chairman of the Blue Banner NGO in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and former Mongolian ambassador to the United Nations.
It's a great privilege and honor for Blue Banner to co-host this virtual roundtable together with the Global Peace Foundation, Action for Korea United, and One Korea Foundation. During last year's Ulaanbaatar Roundtable on Northeast Asian Peaceful Development and Korean Reunification, held also on 30th September, as well as this year's August 15th Global Forum on One Korea, it was decided to organize a series of roundtables addressing specific issues that would promote the main objectives. Based on that understanding, the co-hosts have decided to focus on two interconnected issues: establishing a Northeast Asian nuclear weapon-free zone that would include denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and promoting a robust regional economic development and integration. GPAC Northeast Asia, in partnership with Blue Banner, launched in 2015 a track to civil society dialogue process that created political space and venue for civil society organizations of the region, including from the two Koreas and from the US. The objectives include strengthening the role of civil society in building peace and stability in the region and contributing ideas and recommendations to semi-official or official processes. It is within these goals that Blue Banner has been studying with other NGOs the possibility of establishing a Northeast Asian nuclear weapon-free zone and promoting economic cooperation. It is always easy to be skeptical, while starting something new needs courage and perseverance. The discussions so far have been encouraging. Hence, the co-hosts have decided to start a process that would go beyond exchanging of information and ideas and move to discussing concrete issues and see if and how these processes could lead to some tangible results. The papers that so far have been contributed are a rich trove of ideas and insights. It is hoped that concrete discussion of issues today would be useful for all participants including experts, former ambassadors, scholars, or those that are following the events on and around the Korean Peninsula with concern and interest, who believe that the proceedings and outcome of this roundtable would benefit not only the Koreans, but the Northeast Asian region as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Engsahan. As I mentioned earlier, today's event is built on the ongoing Ulaanbaatar International Roundtable. The Mongolian team has produced a short video on what we have done there. Please enjoy.
Mongolia is a country situated in the heart of Asia. It is a landlocked country bordering Russia and China. It is known as the land of Genghis Khan that built the largest land empire in human history. During the Pax Mongolica, it worked to bring Europe and Asia closer by supporting and ensuring the safety of the Silk Road that connected the two continents and endured peaceful coexistence of different religions. During the Cold War, it was part of the Soviet bloc, and in the post-Cold War era, it became part of Northeast Asia. It has a population of 3.2 million and a land almost as large as Western Europe. It has no territorial or border problems with the immediate neighbors. As a relatively small country of the region, it follows the maxim that a duck is calm when the lake is calm. Hence, it pursues an active peaceful foreign policy aimed at bringing the states of Northeast Asia closer together by serving as a bridge between them or as a facilitator or mediator. It works to be not only a consumer of security, but also an active contributor to it. The advantages of Mongolia are that it maintains good neighborly relations with all the countries of the region, including the two Koreas, and has no hidden agenda regarding the Korean Peninsula. It is recognized by the United Nations as a state with unique nuclear weapon-free status, to which the 5 nuclear weapon states pledged to respect the status and not to contribute to any act that would violate it. Hence, it has 2 decades of rich experience of talking and negotiating with the 5 nuclear weapon states to come to such agreement. In order to contribute to regional confidence and stability, it promotes 1.5-track dialogue among the states known as the Ulaanbaatar Dialogue and brings together representatives of the countries of the region and the United States to consider such soft security issues as economic cooperation, infrastructure development, common ecological challenges, and other issues of mutual concern and interest. GPAC Northeast Asia, in partnership with Mongolian NGO Blue Banner, has launched the Ulaanbaatar Process, a track-to-civil society dialogue process that creates political space and venue for civil society organizations of the region, including the 2 Koreas. The Mongolian people feel the sufferings of the divided Korean people and supports Korea-led Unified Korea, a proud nation of liberty and prosperity for all. No wonder there are dozens of Mongolian civil society organizations that promote cooperation with the Korean peer organizations. Ulaanbaatar International Roundtable on Northeast Asian Peaceful Development and Korean Reunification was held exactly 1 year ago on September 30th. It considered such issues as practical strategies for promoting Northeast Asian peaceful development, envisioning a united Korea as a cornerstone for Northeast Asia peace and development, and possible role of Mongolia in promoting confidence and peace process in Northeast Asia. Many positive ideas were flagged and discussed. One idea was to hold an international forum, Free and Unified Korea, Northeast Asia Regional Collaboration on Denuclearization and Economic Integration. This forum is being co-organized by the Global Peace Foundation, Blue Banner, Mongolian Forum for Korean Unification, Action for Korea United, and One Korea Foundation. It is to examine how Mongolia's example and Northeast Asia nuclear weapon-free zone proposal could contribute to advancing a nuclear weapon-free Korean peninsula with robust regional economic integration.
Thanks for the wonderful video. If condition allows, we will restart the ongoing physical Ulaanbaatar International Roundtable in the fall of next year. You are all welcome to join us in Mongolia then. This concludes the opening session. Based on your registration, you have been assigned to the round tables of your choice. You do not need to take any action, just need to wait for the moderators and discussants. During the discussion, the audience can ask questions by using the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar system. While not all questions will be addressed during the discussion due to time limits, you will help the organizers and experts to understand the audience and to improve the future events. Please enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciation to the organizers, the co-sponsors of this event, and welcome everybody to our panel on economic integration of the Korean Peninsula. This vision of a unified Korea is an elusive one and very challenging one. We know that after the Korean War, South Korea's economy was smaller than Uganda. And right now it's the 12th largest GDP in the world. They call that, as was mentioned earlier, the miracle on the Han. And it was accomplished by a very aggressive and very organized economic initiative that focused a lot on infrastructure, but created a remarkable renaissance and really economic explosion in the South. In the North, of course, is a very different story. The GDP in the North is 115th in the world, and by per capita, it's 179th. The Heritage Foundation's Index of Economic Freedom lists South Korea number 25, and they point out 25 different indicators of economic freedom and equates prosperity and as an outcome of freedom. So South Korea is 25, North Korea is dead last in the Index of Economic Freedom, which is not so hopeful. The challenges then that are faced in considering even the integration of the economies of North and South are huge, and unlimited really, and so are the opportunities really unlimited. The nations surrounding Korea can benefit tremendously from the unification process, and it's very sorry. And we have representatives today from the region, from the major states around impacted by the Korean Peninsula. So we'll hear perspectives on that. But we don't have, in the Northeast, as we know, there's no ASEAN or Association of Southeast Asian Nations. There's a very remarkably diverse community of nations there with very diverse systems. So the challenges are huge, again, and the opportunities also are very great. This panel, we're very excited to convene today because this Zoom technology allows us to meet with experts from all around the world. That development comes from a remarkable challenge with the COVID-19 and remarkable changes in the world. And so the new normal, there's so many, I've been on so many Zoom calls related to the new normal, and that seems to be changed. So really anything can happen. In the north, there's mysterious reports all the time about the regime there. There's changes throughout the whole region. So the problem has been no thinking going into this, the contingency of the unification of North-South Korea. The North Korea is, of course, not a member of the World Bank or Asia Development Bank. So there isn't anyone particularly studying that. There's not much scholarship on it. And that's why this convening is very, very important. If the change could happen very suddenly, there needs to be processes considered for the various contingencies of how that might happen. So today we're exploring different perspectives from different parts of the world, different nations, and also from different sectors to begin this process of contingency thinking, contingency planning for the inevitable reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We have a fantastic panel today from around the world. Some of us are meeting early in the morning, some late at night. And we're going to begin with Mongolia. As the opening panel mentioned, this Mongolia consultation has been going for several years, and we couldn't meet. It's in September usually, and it's a wonderful, unique place in Mongolia. But Mongolia has many lessons for us also, which it has transitioned from a central planned economy, and it is in the neighborhood between very powerful neighbors, and has kind of developed diplomacy to a tremendous level. So this kind of relationships, international relationships and trust is what is exactly needed for developing an economy, for investment, and all the pieces necessary. So we're really proud to start today again in our same platform in Mongolia. And we can imagine we're there. We had a nice video before. And so I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Nanjin Dorjsurin. He's the founding director of the Mongolian Institute of Northeast Asian Security and Strategy. Dr. Dorjsurin, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And it's my great honor to present my views and shares on ideas on this economic integration roundtable. And I really appreciate that from Global Peace Foundation and Blue Banner and Action for Korea United and One Korea Foundation giving me this great opportunity. And it was really nice to see the introduction of my country. And as I right understanding, this section is a continuation of International Forum on One Korea held on August 15, and it's built on annual forums held in UB during the last 2 Septembers. And my presentation will focus on 3 main areas. First, I'd like to summarize the strategic motivation of the main principles of Mongolian foreign policy toward Northeast Asia, because as we all know, in the recent years, many foreign scholars, strategists who are involving in Northeast Asian security issues would like to understand more and learn more about Mongolian strategic direction and contribution in the regional community building. And second, I'd like to study attempts to summarize the experience of Mongolia's economic transition to market economy in 1990s and what kind of challenges we had. And also, I'd like to explore what kind of challenges Northeast Asian integration mechanism are facing now. And especially, I'd like to focus on China, Mongolia, and Russia economic corridor. This is very important for Mongolia because geography is stated between the 2 these big powers and its implications on to the Northeast Asian economic integration. And finally, I'd like to explore the strategic advantages and disadvantages Mongolia have in the region, and about relationship with Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Okay, let me start first part of my presentation. As we all know, Mongolia geographically stayed in Central Asia, but strategically, we are more focusing on Northeast Asia. And in Mongolia advocates Northeast Asia-oriented policy concept in order to overcome its social and economical difficulties to benefit from the success of Asia and Pacific economies. And for instance, in 2011, our former president, Albert Dorsch, he claimed that Mongolia is willing to contribute its effort to establish East Asian community, specifically in a Mongolian national security concept. In 2011, let's make decisions to join regional integration arrangements and concluding the free trade agreements for Mongolian economic security and economic development objectives. And also in Mongolian foreign policy concept state that strengthening its position in Asia and securing participation in the political and economic integration process in the region. And in the introduction of about my country is mentioned that unlike many countries in the region, Mongolia has good relations with all countries, including North and South Korea, and we organized Ulaanbaatar Dialogue for International Security. And last year was 6, but this year, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we couldn't organize this international conference. And I'd like to share that Mongolian former Foreign Minister, Tokbatar, he noted that Mongolia is well versed in the futures and decision-making mechanism and diplomacy of both systems, as it once had a communist system and now is a democratic country with a market economy. And we have been and will work for this. I think this is a very good statement of Mongolian, part of Mongolian foreign policy. And secondly, I'd like to move to second part, because it's the limit of my time, about Northeast Asian integration mechanisms and challenges and perspectives. Mongolian government announced its new national development strategy called Step Road Program in 2014, which is later remained as a development road program. And it was very timely decision at that time when Mongolia's two big neighbors just revealed their regional development strategies. Announced in 2013, China's Belt and Road Initiative aims to strengthen Beijing's economic leadership, and also new Eastern policy, which is announced by Russia in 2012. And Mongolia is well positioned in the middle of Chinese and Russian plans and to expand their transportation cooperation through in Eurasian region. And the China-Mongolia-Russia economic corridor is one of the 6 main six main corridors of the BRI, and known as shortest path between Europe and Asia. So in December in 2019, in last year, during Mongolian Prime Minister's visit to Russia, Mongolia and Russia signed a memorandum of understanding on Mongolian participation in the Power of Siberia 2 project. And also in August this year, Gazprom is a Russian company, signed a memorandum with Mongolian government to create a special company which will develop a study.
6 minutes have passed.
Oh, sorry, for the contribution of the pipeline. Okay, I'll move to my final.
Sir, and you have a little more time, actually. You were meant to have a little more time.
Okay, sorry. About the relationship with DPRK. Mongolia was the second country to recognize DPRK, and as we saw in the video, Kim Il-sung visited Mongolia twice, and these countries had economic pipes and included Mongolian investment in Sungri crude refinery in the Rasol City Special Economic Zone, and developed of massive stock breeding grass zones in DPRK's Kwangson province. And as we know, thousands of North Koreans have worked in medical and agriculture, Kashmir factories in Mongolia. And these workers left our country in 2018 due to pressure of international sanctions. And we don't really have now any economic ties with this country. And I think for North Korea, I think for the key advantage for Mongolia, for a landlocked country, access to the sea. This is, I think, this is main motivation of Mongolia to one of international cooperation, economic integration. And as we know, the Mongolian side tested rail shipping of 30,000 tons of coal to DPRK, Raji port in 2015 and 2016. And one of the primary ways Mongolia has sought to engage DPRK to also with mineral deposits. I think Mongolia has offered one path of North Korea to develop its economy and while retaining its sovereignty. And in the years since establishing ties, DPRK and Mongolia have signed a series of agreements related to technology, agriculture, trade, and infrastructure fields. And in December 2014, a North Korean plane was removed to have landed in Mongolia and to taken a large number of coals from the province in eastern Mongolia. And I think this is a good example of Mongolia for contribution, aid agreement with DPRK. And finally, I'd like to say a little bit mention about our institute. We had in 2015-18, the professors from Institute of Social Scientists of DPRK visited Mongolia, and we had a bilateral meeting about self-reliance policy and self-reliance economy. And this channel, I think, is the extent of non-governmental exchanges between the two countries. And finally, I'd like to say that generally, the civil society should play more role in the region and contribution the region. And thank you very much. I have also almost 30 pages of my presentation, and if so, I will send you more. And thank you for limited time. Yeah.
Thank you very much, George Stern. And Mongolia certainly has a lot to offer. We appreciate your virtual hospitality today, since we are virtually meeting in Mongolia, and it is very instructive on many levels for the challenge we're faced with here for economic integration. So appreciate your comments. Next, we'll move to Korea, South Korea. Dr. Seon-hyung Lee is the director of the Center for Chinese Studies and the former director of the Department of Unification at Sejong Institute. Please welcome Dr. Lee.
Well, thank you for having me for a very distinguished forum. Today, actually, this is my number 5 Zoom forum. This is my 5th forum today. So starting from this morning, I had a forum with Washington and Tokyo and Shanghai and Melbourne in Australia. And this is the final forum, so that after this, I can probably go home and rest. Today I'm here mainly to learn and by listening to other participants' ideas. It's because usually at a forum like this, forum focused on North Korea, Korean Peninsula, Koreans, South Koreans usually we present our ideas, and and other people listen and give us a feedback. But then I think sometimes we Koreans, we need to listen more. And that was advice from a friend of mine, a Chinese diplomat. He told me that you Koreans always tell us, this is our idea, and I want you to do this, that way. And I think this is time that Koreans also need to listen to other people's views and their perspective, because particularly at this time, Korea had some setbacks, 3 setbacks. One is, as you know, remember, last year in late February, we have a Hanoi collapse of the Hanoi summit. That's a one summit setback. The second is the setback is the China-US conflict. And the number three, as we all know, is COVID-19. These are the backgrounds and environments that makes what South Korea wants to do this year. It's making it very difficult when it comes to our ideas and projects when it comes to North Korea integration of economy. Because as you remember, last year was South Korea's very ambitious plan for new Southern policy. That was quite successful. So this year, year 2020, this year was supposed to be, we focus on new Northern policy, so that we focus on Mongolia, networking with Mongolia, Russia, Central Asia, bring North Korea to more integrated to this economic club that we are envisioning. But then due to the collapse of the Hanoi summit and all other factors that I mentioned, it's not going anywhere. So probably this is a good timing
30 seconds remaining.
Koreans to sit back and listen to others. And I agree with Dr. Jae-Pung Liu and also moderator President Dixon that Mongolia could be really a good role model when it comes to what North Korea could reform in the future. And South Korea can also have a lot of room for cooperation. And the North Korea even could learn from Mongolian experience what worked and what did not work. And Mongolia probably could have a list of experiences that North Korea could learn from when it comes to economic reforms, tax reforms, and the privatization of state-owned economy and others. So I'll just stop here and engage in other discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Sorry, we have such short time, but we'll have an exchange here afterwards, and everybody on this panel has so much to share. Now we're going to move from South Korea to North Korea. We have next speaker is Hyun-Sung Lee, who is a defector from the North, and he's connected to the Room 39 family and families, and part of one of the elite from North Korea that can share about the real story inside the North. So you have the floor, Hyun-Sung.
Hello, very nice to meet you, all of you. Thank you very much for having me. It's my great honor to be part of the discussion. I'd like to share some insights of North Korea's economy and its economic opening solution with you. North Korea is already implementing the market economy now. For 20 years after the March of hardship, North Korean residents have been living on a market economy. There are about 500 markets in North Korea now. Not only the general population, but also the elite are benefiting from the market economy. For example, residents are in charge of retailing as product carriers in the market, while the elites are spending and supplying wholesale products, serving as a big hand in the market. The supply and consumption chains they have achieved over the past 20 years have become the core of the North Korea's solid domestic economy, which even the North Korean leadership cannot stop. However, the North Korean regime is always controlling the market and aligning the scale of market activity to the extent that it does not threaten the existence of the regime, because the market economy gives freedom to its people, and the freedom of people threaten to the regime. The North Korean regime has also investigated, believing that there are forces outside of the regime that adjust the prices to control the prices of goods in the market. However, knowing that the market has an invisible hand, they focused more controlling people who are doing market activities than on controlling market itself. North Korea's enlightened elites also know that Mongolia, China, and Vietnam have made a successful shift from a socialist planned economy to market economy. The elites are very envious of the achievement made by these countries and think that North Korea should at least open its economy like those countries. But there is one big difference. One thing, North Korea is different from these countries. Mongolia, China, Vietnam
30 seconds remaining.
did not inherit the regime. As far as I know, the first thing China did when it began to reform and open its economy was to withdraw its Mao Zedong ideology. The inside of North Korea is already at the threshold of the market economy, but the inherited succession and dictatorship of the regime are preventing the legitimate action of the market economy. Everything from freedom, oppression of human rights, and nuclear development is being done by the Kim regime. My final statement would be, if North Korea had not inherited the regime, it had already opened up. I'd like to say, where there is no freedom, you can never think of market economy and no money flows. To live freely is human desire and eternal power. As the Mongolian president, El-Begerdor said in his excellent speech at Kim Il-sung University in North Korea, freedom and human rights must be guaranteed to achieve integration with the world economy in North Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, Hyun-sung. Important insights and rare ones. It's getting information and data from about North Korea is the very most challenging part of this effort toward unification and economic integration. Next speaker represents one of the co-conveners of today's program. Mr. Ingyo Ra is the Secretary General of Global Peace Foundation Korea. Ingyo.
Thank you, John. It is an honor to be invited as a panelist to this prestigious International Forum for Denuclearization and Economic Collaboration in the region. I love the topic of free and unified Korea, and I'm happy to discuss the challenges or solutions of this topic today. In short, free and unified Korea will become the vision of Korea Peninsula economy that Dr. Hyun Jin Moon has emphasized several times. In particular, he reiterated this important issue through an international forum conference online on August 15 this year. Regarding free and unified Korea, I think the Hong Kong situation helps us better understanding the region. Unified Korea can find its roots in the center of Hong-ik-ingan. That's the desire to build a new nation that can benefit all mankind. This profound philosophy has developed the People's Republic that emphasizes the Western democracy and manifests human values to which God is empowered. Everyone has freedom of religion and faith. But North Korean government, on the other hand, does not allow people to express this God-given right. They try to fill people's tummy, but don't let them get their own words right. Last week, a South Korean citizen was brutally murdered in a gunfire, and his body was burned. This clearly shows how they treat humans for their own propaganda. However, now Seoul has become a great opportunity to leap forward as a financial hub in Northeast Asia. The conflict between the US and China has expanded in all directions due to Hong Kong security law enforcement. Following the US-Hong Kong policy signed in 1992, the international financial community has been looking for alternative cities to replace Hong Kong's position since the US deprived Hong Kong of its special status. Currently, there are no financial cities in the area except Hong Kong. Many experts predict that Seoul is difficult to become the financial hub of the region due to inefficient labor market, higher corporate taxes compared to Hong Kong and Singapore, and strict regulations. In addition, many expect this consideration to have a negative impact on diplomatic relations between the
3
US
minutes have passed.
China. However, potential of Seoul is very high due to relatively stable democratic governance, state-of-the-art IT infrastructure, and geographical situation in Northeast Asia. Furthermore, if Seoul can become the next to Hong Kong, it will be an important opportunity for Korea to provide a permanent vision and a new paradigm for building a new country and prospering the region. It is an unprecedented opportunity for human transformation to lead a free and unified Korea to protect financial hub. I believe the international community can naturally ensure regional security. So today I'm very excited to listen what you think about this gesture, and I really hope many international communities support in this context, and many scholars, experts, government agencies can mobilize and bring the focus into the unification of the Korea matters to bring the vision to economy in the region. So especially in Korea, we have Action for Korea United. Among these members, we have many professors in the universities, and they want to launch the Council of Action for Korea United Professor this October, and we will continue to address these critical issues in the Korea communities in the Korea and abroad to support the vision of unified Korea as a vision of the economy in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ra, and appreciate your comments. I apologize for these, as I introduce the speakers, we don't have time to remark about their bio, include their whole bio, and an abbreviated one is on the website. So the background of all of these speakers is remarkable, and I hope the people watching will take advantage of that and follow up with these people. Thanks again, Mr. Ra. Next, we'll move to Japan. Hear from Dr. Mitsuhiro Nimura. Dr. Nimura is a Senior Research Fellow at the Economic Research Institute for Northeast Asia. Please welcome Dr. Nimura.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor to be a part of this conference. And I'm from Japan, and I'm here in order to tell you that Japan is also a part of Northeast Asia. Actually, Japan is situated in the seaside of Northeast Asia, and in the past, yes, we had a lot of things done in Northeast Asia. We had the Manchukuo, and we occupied the many part of China, and we had the Red Army and the Mongolian army that smashed our troops in by 3 tanks. Tankista, and there are so many things. But now Japan is a kind of a peaceful country. Some people might not believe it, but anyway, and we contributed a lot to make regional society is prosperous. So in Northeast Asia, we have still Cold War structure and thinking. That prevents wide range of open thinking on our region. So we need to remember what happened in Southeast Asia or ASEAN countries during 30 years after the Cold War finished. In 1990s, it was so hard to imagine that we can travel by car from Hue, Vietnam, via Laos, and then arrive in Bangkok on the same day. But now it's possible. Everything was divided from one side to another then. That is the case of the Northeast Asia today. So do you know how many days you take to go around the 3 towns in the border area in Russia, China, and DPLK. Hunchun, China, Hassan, Russia, and Rason, DPLK. That have just a small geographical distance each other. Actually, in the best case, it takes 3 days. But in Southeast Asia, you can go through these cities, like that kind of cities, in some 2-3 hours, 4 hours, and 5 hours.
30 seconds remaining.
So I think the future of Northeast Asia is not so dark. I think I'm very optimistic about the future of Northeast Asian integration, and I hope we'll have good days in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nimura. Japan is, of course, part of Northeast Asia and a very important partner in this process. And of course, the relationship with Korea has been challenged over the years and recently also. But I think the voice of Japan, the experience is very, very valuable, especially as it's been leading the Asia Development Bank since its founding and represents a very stable voice in the region. It's a very challenging region. So you brought up some very good points, and we appreciate those. And being the only representative from Japan, it's not quite fair for you to, but we'll come back later in the discussion. Thanks so much. Our next speaker is from Russia, and but living in Australia. So we have a very, and speaks fluent Korean. So we have a very interesting broad perspective. Next from Dr. Leonid Petrov, visiting fellow at the College of Asia and the Pacific at the Australian National University. Dr. Petrov.
Thank you, John. 안녕들 하십니까? 사인 바이누, 님은 하오, 동주먼, konbanwa, minasan. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. And special thanks to Global Peace Foundation for organizing this wonderful opportunity to share ideas with colleagues and discussing very, very important issues. Well, we're basically talking about war and peace, and we're talking about democracy and dictatorships. So South Korea is a democracy and export-oriented economy, but it hasn't been always like this. John mentioned that in his introduction that South Korea used to be the poorest country in East Asia, and it was a dictatorship until 1987. But now, these days, South Korea is the 12th largest economy in the world. Just next door to this powerhouse of East Asia lies North Korea, which used to be the most industrialized nation in East Asia after Japan, after the Second World War, but later it turned into the economic disaster because it's a one-party dynasty state. It was disengaged even from the communist bloc, Comecon group of countries, never integrated properly into the Economic Cooperation Organization. But since 2013, North Korea adopted a new policy, Pyeongjin-Roson, the parallel development line, where the focus is placed both on economy and security. So what we can expect from these two countries which don't recognize each other, which are totally different in economic stance? Unification, perhaps, or maybe coexistence. So there are basically 4 scenarios which we can expect. Unification. It may be a violent unification tomorrow. Pukshin Tongil, Hupsu Tongil, march north and unify. It's going to be very traumatic, very expensive, occupation by absorption. I don't think anyone wants this to happen. Peaceful unification, well, it's going to be very costly exercise. It took about 2 trillion euros for for East and West Germany to unify. So instead of peaceful unification, I think it could be coexistence, even if it's a hostile coexistence. I believe it's going to be much more acceptable solution. Yes, there are sanctions, isolation, mistrust, but at least there's no war. And the fourth option would be the peaceful coexistence, where engagement, cooperation, and trade would prevail. Something would
have passed.
What Sunshine Policy has demonstrated, and what the current government of Moon Jae-in is proposing to resume. So it's up to us to decide what scenario we would like to see. All right, I think I'll stop here. I have more to discuss, and I'll be happy to continue and answer the questions from the floor or discuss with colleagues the potential scenarios and the role of neighbors, including Russia, including China and Japan, United States, Australia, and other countries. I think there is always place for anyone to participate and contribute and turn the inter-Korean cooperation into trans-Eurasian cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Petrov. For sure, this is going to require the whole global community, and especially the players that you mentioned, to see a hopefully peaceful integration of the peninsula. And those various scenarios are very real and need to be studied and worked through. And this is a great team to do that. So thanks very much for your presentation. We hope we can get more time to follow up with that. And appreciate bringing the Australia as well as the rest of the important countries there. Next speaker is from China. And again, please look at the bios of these people. They're all really remarkable. But this is Mr. Victor Gao is the Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, which has partnered with the Peace Foundation and others, I think, on several initiatives in the past, and especially some of the recent convenings in Seoul. Mr. Gao, you have the floor. Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Gao. And you're sideways. I can't hear you.
Do I look upright?
Oh, there you are. Yes. No, you need to. It's your sideways on our screen now. There you go.
Okay. Am I all right now?
You're great.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and great honor for me to attend this very important seminar. Allow me to make several points. One is, and I believe China fully support the reunification of the two Koreas. However, allow me to add several points. That is, I don't think reunification can be achieved without denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. And to achieve real denuclearization, you need to put all the stakeholders on the same line, especially including the United States, China, and Russia, for example. And with China and the United States each trying to get at each other's jugular, it is very difficult to line up all the necessary conditions to achieve denuclearization. Allow me to add a point. To achieve real denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, real trust is absolutely a precondition. And I don't think North Korea can trust the current government in Washington, and whether the future governments will change significantly to restore trust, that's another thing. Now, achieving denuclearization is a precondition to integration and unification of the Koreans. However, I would say economic integration needs to happen before political integration. And eventually, as many of our panelists emphasized, They want to achieve a free Korea with human rights, respecting constitutional laws, etc. All these are very important values to be pursued. But I think if you look at the world from the DPRK's perspective, its government, its regime want to be a co-equal to ROK rather than being treated as an inferior entity to the reunification process. So eventually, I think there will be a process, very long process, involving the two Koreas to work things out, to achieve mutual trust and mutual respect, and figure out what's the best way to achieve political reunification. And I would say it probably would involve one Korea with two governments, or one Korea with two parts of Korea, each having its own system, and each will need to respect the other side of the equation for quite some time. And I think economic reunification and integration and leading to the eventual political reunification will be absolutely the good thing for East Asia and for Northeast Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. You brought up, of course, very important points, and it's interesting to promote the idea that the economic integration should come before the political or even denuclearization, even though I understand that it's a chicken and egg issue there with the denuclearization and the economic integration. But because of denuclearization and human rights, many times this conversation never happens. So we're grateful you brought that in, many important points. And those are all part of the challenges that we face here. And reiterating one more time that the vision that's been proposed is one of a Korean-led one. And I think it's time that Korea do take the lead on this, and that's I think that's an important aspect of these. When you mention the big players around and the challenges from the current political climate. Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. Next next speaker is Mr. Ye-Ching Lee. You saw him earlier this morning. He's was the moderator at the opening session. He's a senior fellow on Northeast Asia Peace and Development for the Global Peace Foundation. Please welcome Mr. Lee.
Thank you, John. And I'm very happy to work on this issue, Northeast Asia Peace and Development. I'm a Chinese. My wife is Japanese, and my son is American. And for me, there's no choice. I have to work on peace in the region. And so from the interest of China as a nation, I think China, as Mr. Gao talking about, China supports unification of Korea for many reasons. And Korea as a unified country, as a neighbor of China for more than 1,000 years. And so it should be very natural for China to have a unified Korean as a neighbor in the future. And the division is a short part of the history of Korea. And actually, even since the March 1st movement of Korea, in Korea, that time, China under the Republic of China government also supports unification, independent and unified Korea, including supported the provisional government in Shanghai. So, and then for the now time, even during the last visit, President Xi to South Korea, he also stated publicly, and China supports Korean-led peaceful unification. So for many reasons, including for the economic side, the China's future development, and So in terms of trading, both North and South Korea, the largest trading partners, China and Japan as well. And China nowadays spend lots of energy on Belt and Road Initiative. But compared to all different directions, actually Northeast Asia part, actually this is a lot more kind of complementary, and then it's low-hanging fruits in a way. And still have lots of opportunities to develop. And especially talking about if unification happens in Korea in terms of infrastructure, manufacturing, and tourism, mining, service, all those areas. Actually, there are lots of opportunities. And but however, I have a little bit different view from Mr. Gao. Mr. Gao talking about the economy aspect development first. Actually, during the last 30, 40 years, already kind of developed in this area. But however, nowadays the major factor is U.S.-China relations. And we are getting into a decoupling and then into a new Cold War kind of situation. So without solving these fundamental U.S.-China relations and dealing with the fundamental issues, probably be very difficult for the further development. So I would encourage everyone here can also contribute in this area, how to really find a long-term solution to set mutually beneficial relations between U.S. China, and as well as set foundation for long-term development in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Yeching. Of course, China does represent an enormous aspect of this consideration of North Korea and South Korea reunification. And there will be, I think, a forum dedicated just to the China-U.S. Korea relations, I think next month. So it requires a lot of study and consideration. Thanks for the points you brought up, and also from Mr. Gao from the China perspective. Next, we have a China hand, but he's going to speak about Vietnam, again, as a possible experience that can inform this process, North-South integration, and two different economies. I'd like to welcome Mr. Saurabh Gupta. He's Senior Fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies. Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, John, for the invitation to speak. Let me make just a few short, brief, overarching observations about the Vietnam model. There has been allusion to that Vietnam model simply because, the obvious scarcities in North Korea, the hard-hitting economic sanctions happening in North Korea, decline in central government finances, expansion of illegal markets. So that comparison has been made. Now, when I talk of Vietnam model, there are two models. One model is about the political normalization of ties with the United States and the Western world and the international community. That's not what I'm speaking about. I'm going to speak about the economic development and regional and global integration model, that the lessons of Vietnam related to North Korea. Just for overarching observations, observation number one, North Korea cannot afford to be both the national security state and the development state. Vietnam couldn't in the 1980s. It had to leave Cambodia. It had to downsize its military. North Korea will not be able to do it for an extended period of time. You could do it for a short period of time, but the Beijing model of both national security and development for an extended period of time does not hold. North Korea cannot walk and chew gum. It needs to make that choice. That's observation number one. Observation number two, reform must happen at the macro level. There are these one-off cooperative models, like we have Kaesong and we have Mount Kumgang. I have my own pet little model in this one, pet little cooperation arrangement, which can be done in the West Sea in terms of a joint development zone. All this is good, But at the end of the day, these things have to be done at a macro level, not as one-off cooperation mechanisms. And fundamentally, if you can't do it at a macro level, you will not be able to shift the needle in terms of Vietnam, of North Korea's integration into the larger international community. Third observation, land policy reform is fundamental and important. No East Asian state, no East Asian tiger, which has become which has really risen to prominence and achieved great heights.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Without thorough land reform, and North Korea will have to go through that process. It's moving in that direction, but it needs to be much more thorough and rooted, particularly in areas of security of land access and tenure. And of course, then you have to develop markets. Final point I'll make is the IFIs, the international financial institutions, are critical even before even a first dollar of funding is disbursed. They're very important for capacity building. That's been the case with, as we see the case with Myanmar today.
3 minutes have passed.
Yes, once they also come to the point where actual money can be put out, if North Korea does reform, they're useful for donor coordination as well as for developing foreign confidence in the local economy. So let me just conclude by making this one observation. You know, there's this false choice which is put out like, oh, North Korea reconstructing North Korea is such an expensive proposition. Yes, it could be, but it need not also be. I think it's a false question. North Korea, the reform and reconstruction of North Korea will be only as expensive or inexpensive as North Korea makes it to be. And for that to be the case, North Korea must go down the reform path, and in which case it will not be as expensive as people consider it to be. So those are just a few observations about the Vietnam model. Happy to speak about it later. Thank you.
Thanks much, Dr. Gupta. Appreciate your insights and on Vietnam, which is an area I didn't know that you were an expert before. You're very well experienced with China and U.S. and Korea. So thanks for that. That's very helpful. Next, we'll come to the United States. Next speaker is Mr. Don Manzullo. He's a former chairman of the Asia Subcommittee of the U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Committee, and also the recent former president of the Korea Economic Institute. He's led many interparliamentary initiatives throughout the world, and gives us a little bit of a government perspective this morning from the United States. Honorable Manzullo, you have the floor. You have to unmute on there.
Am I all right now?
You're good.
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be with this very august group from around the world. Let me just share a couple of things. Number one, the big problem in South Korea is that the young people are not interested in it. Poll after poll shows that the younger South Koreans are really afraid of what integration and unification between the two countries will be. The Department of Unification takes the approach that its name is correct. It's not the Department of Reunification, it's the Department of Unification, which assumes the fact that the separation is only temporary and not a permanent thing. And so it's really important for South Korea to do whatever it can to really step up the interest of the young people, to carry on the vision and the dream, not only of the Declaration of Independence of March 1st of 1919, but also the Korean Constitution, which talk about one Korea. That's absolutely critical that happens. The second thing is, I chaired various interparliamentary exchanges. I was the chairman of the U.S.-China Interparliamentary Exchange, the U.S.-Canadian interparliamentary exchange, and I participated in the U.S.-Mexico, the U.S.-EU, and the U.S.-Japan-Korea interparliamentary exchanges. These are critical because they give members of assemblies and parliaments and Congress the opportunity to interact on a firsthand basis with their counterparts in the various countries. I was in leading a delegation, in fact, it was the largest delegation of U.S. members of Congress, and we were in China at Johns Hopkins University, and we held a remarkable meeting there of about 200 students and 13 members of Congress, in an open session talking about various different types of topics. So you never really know what's going to happen when you have these communications taking place among members of Congress, but it's extremely important to broaden the scope. I mean, for example, there should be a student that would be speaking as part of this forum, because most of the people here have gray hair and gray beards. To keep the dream alive, to let the people know that unification of the Korean Peninsula is not just important to Korea, but to world peace as a whole.
Thank you, Don. That's a really important aspect of this. This one issue in that very strategic point on the Korean Peninsula does have global impact, and it is the kind of the last vestige of the Cold War and even colonialism. So solving this one will really go a long way toward building an entire world of peace and peaceful relations. Thank you also for bringing up the youth. I think that's really critical. You mentioned the parliamentarians, and then also the young people have to get the vision. I know that the Action for Korea United has sponsored many K-pop concerts and people and performers that catch this vision and share that and have some impact. But that's very, very important. Bringing from the top and the bottom have to both be committed and involved to make this work. This is going to take a whole of government, whole of the private sector, and the whole of civil society together to make this happen. Our next speaker is also from the United States, Dr. Catherine Forsland. She's the chair of the Historical and International Studies Department at Rockford University. Dr. Forsland.
Good morning. Good morning and good evening to everyone. I wanted to also share my thanks at including me in this august body. Some comments I have to make are probably obvious, but I'll bring them up anyway to get them onto the floor of the discussion. The idea of academic partnerships, particularly at the higher education level. I think that can be a way for not only the two Koreas, but any countries to gain information and an understanding of each other's culture and society. I think it can be, it can include students as well as faculty members doing research projects in cooperation with each other, doing shared visits and teaching it at each other's institutions. And this can be in any area of academics, any kind of discipline, whether it's humanities. I work in history primarily, but it could be in literature and art and music, and also the sciences, the physical sciences, the biological sciences, I mean, certainly in some ways, COVID presents an international opportunity for people to try and work together to find solutions. So I think across the board of the academy in terms of any discipline, there are opportunities for academic partnerships. And I would see these as being both at the student level as well as the faculty level, to exchange ideas of how to teach, different teaching methods, different materials that are used for teaching, but also different ways of learning. We have a lot of international students at Rockford University, and we send students abroad as well, and they all gain from the different culture of learning in which they are immersed. And I think in some ways, education can be, and academics can be a less threatening sort of way to engage with each other, although I'm not sure that everybody would see it that way, but I think that's a good place to start. And so I will, be happy to continue with that thought in the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Surely capacity building is going to be very important in the North, with most of their average citizens having no experience or access to resources or influence. So the education initiative will be a very important part of moving this process forward. So thanks very much for those comments. Yes, okay, so our next speaker was just in South Korea last fall on a very important, with an important international conference. Mr. Louis D'Amour is the founder and president of the International Institute for Peace Through Tourism. And Lou would be happy to hear your thoughts on your experience and moving forward your advice on, as one sector of the economy, could how that might impact this issue. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. A united Korea would be a major contribution to world peace and a prosperous Asia. Tourism, culture, and sport have much to contribute towards this end. The contribution of sport began some 30 years ago with the 1988 Seoul Summer Olympics and its theme, reconciliation and progress, as the basic spirit of the Games. And as reflected in the theme song of the Games, hand in hand we stand, all across the land. We can make this world a better place, living in harmony for all time. And as well, the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, as the two Koreas marched into the stadium under the unified Korean flag, inspiring people around the world as athletes competed together as one Korean team. And a few months later, North and South Korean women came together for a combined Korean women's table tennis team, winning a bronze medal at the World Championships in Sweden. Cultural diplomacy has also played a key role. In 2018, the K-pop girl band that John has already mentioned, Red Velvet, and other artists performed in Pyongyang in a concert themed Peace and Hope for Unification. At the end of the concert, the packed audience of 1,500 enthusiastically joined with the pop stars in singing Our Wish is Unification. North Korean President Kim Jong-un said he was deeply moved as he watched the performance along with his wife. He personally showed his appreciation to the South Korean artists following the concert. This year has been a difficult one for tourism throughout the world as a result of the global pandemic. But a look back at 2019 indicates that there were 1.5 billion international trips, contributing 10.4% of the total world GDP.
30 seconds remaining.
Or more than $9 trillion US, 4.3% of world capital investment, 330 million jobs, or 1 in 10 jobs around the world. In the 5 years prior to 2020, it accounted for 1 in every 4 new jobs. A global model of the power of tourism in reducing poverty is the Chinese new town of Danzai-Wanda, specifically designed and built as a tourism town in 2017 in one of the poorest provinces of China. In 3 years, Danzai-Wanda has received 20 million tourists. And in April of this year, Guizhou province announced that Danzai County had eradicated poverty. IIPT was proud to dedicate Danzai-Wanda as an IIPT International Town of Peace. Perhaps the first tourist into North Korea was Hyundai founder Chung Jo-young, who in 1988, at the age of 83, led a cow across the border at Panmunjom, followed by his sons with another 500 head of cattle that were donated to feed Chung's old village of Asan. At the border, he announced that he wants his visit to be a kind of cornerstone leading to North-South reunification and to peace. Mr. Chung subsequently received permission to establish a resort at Diamond Mountain. Throughout the 10 years of operation from 1998 to 2008, a total of 2 million South Koreans visited Diamond Mountain, providing an important source of hard currency. Perhaps 2021 can begin a new peace initiative between the two Koreas with the declaration of a Korean Peace Through Tourism Week, beginning on September 1, the UN International Day of Peace, and ending on September 27, World Tourism Day, and featuring a global summit on peace through tourism, culture, and sport. I look forward to a future more detailed discussion on building a prosperous and harmonious Korea through tourism, culture, and sport. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Lou, very much. I know your organization and you have engaged with the UN and the World Tourism Organization for many years, and it's an important initiative. I look forward to I think one of the world's most exotic tourist destinations might be the DMZ, hopefully very soon. Everybody can go and visit. Thanks for
Absolutely, John. And I think the DMZ would be an ideal candidate for an international peace park.
Perfect, sure. Thank you, Lou. Our next speaker is Mr. Craig Stefansson. He's Global Development Consultant and former director for many years of the Asia Development Bank North America office. Craig, you have the floor. Speaking to us today from Sweden, by the way. Welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yep. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. While this discussion has been going on, I Googled cost of reunification of East and West Germany. And I won't swear by these numbers, but one figure I came across was that it cost about 2 trillion euros. It was the largest investment in West Germany's history. And I think there's a broad agreement that maybe that investment has paid off. It certainly contributed to economic revival in Germany that I think has had positive impacts on neighboring countries, if not Europe. I also Googled estimated reunification cost of North and South Korea. And the numbers vary widely, but some figures that came out fairly recently estimated cost at least $1 trillion, possibly as much as $3 trillion. The numbers vary because how the relationship evolves over time matters a lot in terms of the cost that may need to be incurred. I say all of this because a number of years ago, I put together an estimate of what the international financial institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the new Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the United Nations Development Program, you know, these major international financial institutions, what they might be able to provide in the way of support for economic reintegration, and for infrastructure development, for social infrastructure, and so on. And you know, times have changed, and there's no telling what policymakers will decide to do tomorrow. But
30 seconds remaining.
for a country the size of North Korea, with its population and with its resource base and so on, the estimate that I was able to come up with was a few $1 billion a year. So compare that to estimated reunification cost of $1 to $3 trillion a year, and it's pretty clear that, you know, the international financial institutions aren't going to be able to cut it. And it's imperative, therefore, that people get their heads around the notion that you know, North Korea,
Minutes have passed.
you know, that nut is only going to be able to crack by getting private investors in there. It's not a question of aid agencies helping North Korea out of its mess. It's really a question of private investors getting in there and be able to get some things going. I guess I'm out of time, so I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. There's certainly a lot to discuss there about with these multilateral finance institutions, and it also makes this conversation very urgent in that the banks do move slowly. So it's going to there has to be consideration in advance, and private sector investment is also very, very important. I think, you know, I appreciate the comments you've made today, and I know in the past we've discussed many more details on about the banks, but we can do more of that moving forward. Thank you for your presentation. Final speaker today is one of the co-conveners of this gathering, and he's the founder of the One Korea Foundation. Also, he happens to have been born in North Korea, so he's really committed to this challenge more than as much as anybody I've ever met. Let's welcome for our final concluding speaker, Dr. Jae-Pung Ryu. Jay, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay.
It's good now.
Can you hear? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we're good.
In this roundtable, we all heard some very interesting and fresh views and opinions and insights, and some recommendations we ought to take very seriously in our minds and in our future planning of sessions like this. The ideas like we have to pay a lot more attention than we have so far for educating the young people in South Korea. We should look closely at the models of Vietnam and Mongolia, and the importance of Japan for the future of this region. All of this, of course, we had some ideas and we knew about it, but it was refreshing to be mentioned, and there was some new lights shed on them as well. And I thank you, all the speakers, for that. But I'd like to suggest that we look at all this from a slightly different angle, because currently we are facing a world, we're living in a world that looks increasingly different from the world of 30, 50 years ago, even the world of just 2 to 5 years ago. Whether we really realize it or not, we are in the thick of global historical transformation, global virus pandemic, tensions and conflict among great powers, frequency of natural disasters, re-emergence of nationalism with populism, and decline of credible press, both print and broadcast, and the alarming dominance of the airwaves by fake news. All these are cases for illustration. In this transformation, in this transformative conflict and confusion, some kind of new world will emerge. And this new world will not just emerge for us to observe, we can participate in creation of whatever that comes anew. So let's, in that spirit, we look at whatever we discuss, once again, from this angle, may give us some lessons as well. Because in this transformative conflict and confusion, the eyes of the world are still in Northeast Asia, where all great powers are keenly focused upon. How we cope with nuclear threat, promote economic collaboration, and achieve the unification of Korea that will be strong and free, and that is, abiding by the rules, and no person dominating, no party dominating. These are the visions. But then, to achieve these visions, we must emphasize, as a participant in this forum, the importance of our work as an NGO. Because what I see is a declining credibility of all major institutions of the world. People don't trust government, what government says anymore, because government is run by people who do not represent all the people, just a fraction, their own supporters. It's the government that in South Korea, in European countries, in Latin America, Africa, this is a rising trend. So fake news dominates, and we don't know what to do. And in the atmosphere of declining confidence and credibility of governmental and other traditional institutions, we may have a room to maneuver as an NGO. We have to begin to act more fairly and more, we don't lack ideas. What we lack is money and, resources and supportive people. But that's what we perhaps have to pay some attention to. I found the panel very, very interesting, and I think we should continue. And we should all contribute, not just we talk about what we are interested in, but perhaps we could contribute how we can improve this forum. For example, when it takes place again in a virtual roundtable like this again, or fortunately some vaccine will appear that we can move around and meet together face to face more easily, then we can meet. But then ideas should not just be repeated each time we meet. One meeting should be a foundation, a base for the next meeting, so that next meeting we discuss something at a higher level. Vision is translated into programs and actions and so on. Otherwise, we just talk and talk and talk. So that's what I suggest, that I like to suggest everybody, not just conveners and sponsors, everybody should kind of take an ownership of this forum as a something of entity that can wield some influence in the making of the policies, in education, in foreign policy, in economy, and so on. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the participants for their contributions.
Thank you very much, Jay. Jay's been to Mongolia the last 2 sessions over there and has been a really active partner in this real important investigation and exploration. I appreciate all the comments that shared today. And Jay is right. The comments are it's a very disparate collection of speakers today, but this is it's a challenge of bringing together 2 very disparate countries, right? I mean, countries or cultures, or the cultures aren't so different, but the economies are very, very different. and the history has been rough for the last 70 years. So I thought I'd just present one question here that came from one of the people attending today. Can a framework be established to encourage entrepreneurship, broad-based participation, and access to capital for, I think they're thinking of people in the North especially. Our goal, our target was to explore a framework for economic integration. And can that be done? Jay, go ahead. You're on mute, Jay.
Sorry, I think the issue was mentioned a little bit by Hyun-Sung Lee, who talked about the black market of North Korea and how the open free market economy is impossible when you ignore human rights and freedom. So you can have a framework if we are free of this Kim regime with its all repressing, imposing, structure of every facet, every tiny aspect of human life is under control. And then you want to open up a little bit. Someone mentioned that how this regional, something in Kaesong or something in Rajin and Sunbong, this will not succeed, and I agree totally with it. One thing changes, everything is possible. If that does not change, nothing is possible. That's my answer. Framework, yes. Workable framework, very possible. Only if we are rid of Kim family regime.
Dr. Gupta?
Yeah, that's part, in response to that question, that's part of the reason I brought up the issue of the international financial institutions, because they can do capacity building in a fairly neutral environment, because these are member-run bodies, and usually it will be left to the executive staff of these bodies to be doing that without their political masters dictating. Of course, there are basic ground rules that North Korea has to observe and basic transparency requirements that North Korea has to observe. But I mean, if we can get that far, at least just that much far in terms of having the Kim dynasty's acceptance of that much, you can start building some mid to senior level institutional capacity within the North Korean system, and which can then, when the moment is opportune, like it is in the case to an extent in Myanmar today, that capacity can serve as a foundation. And so it's not easy to get to that point, because at the end of the day, the Kim regime will do only that much which it can do for its survival and for its control. And so if we can transcend that and alter incentive structures a little bit, I think that is one way in which we can have that both institutional framework and a capacity which can then take it from there on. Think about in terms of Belarus today, you have a dictator who's basically stolen an election, but at the same time, there is fairly good capacity within government to run government. And so all it takes is when the top gets toppled, hopefully soon, or whenever that happens, it opens up the system and that society for a very significant transformation on the lines that we'd like to see. So that's why I brought that issue of international financial institutions who can do that. And it could be ADB, World Bank, IMF, and I think before even one drop of money is put in out there, they can do a transformative role before. And I think we could explore that aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Craig, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I second the comments made by Dr. Gupta. I think he made some good points. As a case in point, I think the experience of China which joined the international financial institutions in the early 1980s, shows that a great deal can be accomplished when a government commits itself to fundamental policy reforms. It's not necessarily a precondition for us to get involved, but it's essential nonetheless if North Korea and its partners want to see great strides taken. When the Chinese embarked on their economic reform program under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, the IFIs were able to provide quite a bit of assistance, but the prerequisite of our support and the results that were achieved over the years were based really on a determination by the Chinese leadership to undertake the kinds of economic policy changes that could make our assistance effective. They were a good client. They still are. And it's a case in point that North and South, I think there is scope there to learn from South Korea's experience, the miracle that we've seen there, and apply those lessons of development to the North. The critical constraint in all of this right now is just the lack of information on the North. But when North Korea opens up, the funds needed will be massive and the risk will be high. And I think the IFIs can play, some role moving forward and figuring out all these information gaps that we're trying to sort out.
Thank you again, Craig. Dr. Petrov?
Yes, thank you, John. I would like to also say a few words about the possibility of reform, right? If we talk about looking for framework for North Korea, we have to understand that North Korea is desperately trying to modernize itself without modernizing its institutions, which is impossible, mission impossible, right? So you can pump as much money as you wish. It will end up in the pockets of the elites, military, secret police, party bureaucrats, and the Kim's family. And Kim Jong-un is not interested in following the path of Michael Gorbachev or Nikolai Ceausescu. Right? He is living a comfortable life. He doesn't need any radical reform or institutional reform. He doesn't need independent courts or free media or fair elections. So without it, there's simply no way of any investments going there and bringing any profit for the stakeholders. So any reform would undermine Kim's and the elite's legitimacy and safety, and it will open door to dissidents and generally destabilize the economy. It's something what happened in the Soviet Union is going to happen in North Korea, and they know it will end up very quickly and very badly for the elites. South Koreans will be there, and they would need to leave the country, or this will probably end their lives. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Petrov. That's very realistic look at the current situation there. Is any?
May I ask a question to a specific speaker?
Yeah, sure, Jay.
Yeah, I think
open floor now.
To Mr. Victor Gao. In your presentation, I don't know, I may have misheard you, but you seem to suggest as a possibility that the DPRK's view has to be considered. And it seemed that I had a feeling that you thought it possible for South Korea to coexist with North Korea, with Kim in power. And other things, we can have trade, we can do things. We can do all things, respect each other. I know sovereignty and freedom and independence, and we coexist peacefully. Is that possible, is my question. Is that I don't know. I'd like to see it's possible. Please educate me. I want to know. If it is possible and there is a way, I will be there for you, with you. I think he has.
Yeah, this is Victor Gao.
Yeah, we hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Victor Gao. Thank you very much. I think everything is possible. The only difference is whether it is probable or not. Now, the choices are dire choices. You either, have one side of the equation taking over the other side of the equation, and the other side refuses, and then what you will get is a war, a confrontation, bloodshed, etc. And eventually it may be even worse than the status quo that we now have. Or eventually you need to come up with greater wisdom, and you need to respect each other even though you do not like what the other side has, and you have to live with that for a while. Because otherwise, if one side tries to impose its version of the truth onto the other side, its own value system onto the other side, it may not only not succeed, it may even backfire. That's the problem on the Korean Peninsula. Now, we talked about financial aid, economic assistance, etc. I don't think that will be possible without really achieving denuclearization first, which in itself is almost impossible to achieve, because if you look at the United States government's position, they do not want to have anything happening on the north side of the DMZ without lining up a firm commitment to denuclearization, which is very, very difficult to obtain. So I think we need to line up the roadmap very carefully, also weighted with the probability of which party, which stakeholder may do to support or to object it. And then eventually you come up with a possible solution to this very, very difficult situation. I don't think DPRK wants to give up power and wants to accept the version of ROK, either political, in terms of political system, value system, etc. I think they want to kick around and survive. That's their bottom line, I think. And the way to achieve this is to hold on to their nuclear power, which creates a lot of difficulty for all the stakeholders here to surmount all these difficulties. So I think personally, the sequence should be denuclearization, and in order to achieve denuclearization, DPRK or its regime need to feel comfortable enough that they will not be threatened, because I think right now their nightmare is that once they give up the nuclear weapon, something bad will happen to them and their survivability will be terminated. That's the problem. That's holding everything else. And how to achieve that? I published an article, and there is not enough time for us to go into details, but the article is a well-structured one. It lays out the different possibilities. But I think of key importance is to have the United States and China at least to be on the same page as to how this denuclearization process needs to work out, because otherwise it will not work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gao. We're really getting up against our time limit here. Don, I saw your hand raised, and I'd like to give Dr. Nimura also just a final word, since you're the only Japanese person here and everybody else had more than that, a representative. And then since it came up about the young people, I think we have one young person without a gray beard on the panel, and I'd like to ask Hyun-Sung Lee to give a kind of just a quick last word. And then I'll just mention, I'm just not sure if we're going to be able to go past the 10 o'clock time. So, and we want to conclude and maybe could stay. But Don, if you have a quick comment, and then we'll go to Dr. Nimura and then Hyun-Sung.
I'll defer.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll catch you the next one.
Okay. The mindset of the people of the DPRK had changed a lot, dramatically. And even executives of state-owned enterprises have changed. And profit seeking is important, keep their enterprises run smoothly, and also to keep their position safe. But the question is that the quality of the market is so bad in North Korea at this moment. So for us, in order to make Northeast Asian economic integration, it is very important to make the quality of the market in North Korea and also other countries in this region better. So there are so many things for us to do. And capacity building is important, and financial institution is important. Also, political reform is also important. But I think we should do it step by step, and drawing is a blueprint for maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, and start one of the simplest thing at the beginning. So I don't think it's not good to finish the unification or integration process finishes when we are alive for our generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nimura. Hyun-sung?
Thank you for all your great insights. I really appreciate the insights, especially Honorable Mandela and then Dr. Petrov and Dr. Jerry. So I totally agree with you. Education is important, and then other people are talking about investment, and then whether North Korea is ready to accept or not. I extremely agree with Dr. Petrov, and then economic reform will undermine Kim's authority. But slightly, I have a different view on North Korean elites. I would say North Korean elites are ready to accept market economy, and that they all know market economy's benefit, and the general population also knows that. The main problem here is the regime is not willing to accept market economy, especially Kim Jong-un, because the Kim family regime committed 70 years the inhumane crimes to the North Korean people, and they want to hide it. If the reality and the information is revealed to the outside, and then he cannot maintain his regime. So Kim Jong-un also knows very clearly market economy will benefit North Korean people. And then he also studied market economy and then gave us direction that whether it's market economy or planned economy, which one is better. And then we all studied, but have a conclusion that market economy is the best economy in this world. But as you know, Kim doesn't want to accept market economy. So we know the cause. So I would say the solution, the best solution is only I can say that remove the cause, the regime, the main figure of the regime, and then I think it can solve every problem in North Korean region, and we can get the peaceful deal in East Asia reign. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Hyun-sung. I wanted to mention two upcoming forums, and next month is a U.S.-China-Korea relations forum that'll be on November 20th, and then in December 4th is one on forum, another webinar focused on human rights in North Korea. And I would like to, this is a large group, but we have in August or July, we organized a very smaller, succinct kind of working group that was off the record, and we could have a lot more give and take. We'd like to have those moving forward, and we can work in different sectors, look at different aspects, and I'd really, we'd be very happy if everybody here would be interested in participating in some of these working group sessions. We don't have the dates right now, but we'll set them up. And then if you have, again, there's not a lot of scholarship in this area, and it's very, very broad. It's a huge question, but a very important one that the whole world is impacted and will be impacted by. So if you have written papers, or you know of papers or even articles, news articles, please send them, and we'll begin to compile that and keep a library of things like that and share those widely. But because the information is pretty scant coming out of the North for sure, there's a lot of big things to consider, as so big, and we touched on those today. So it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of more discussion, but your input is so valuable and so important. Your backgrounds are fantastic, and it's a very broad a survey we did today. So I just want to thank everybody. Jay, you had a comment. I think, Catherine, did you have your hand raised earlier also?
Just one.
Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Last I want to make is I'm trying to write a book, a small book, because it's meant for the public on U.S.-Korea alliance. And when I finish the first draft, I don't know when it will be. I hope it will be 2-3 months. If some of you volunteer to kind of review and critique it, that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, we'll pass that around.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Catherine, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the historical background of developing cultural connections between countries. We can look at ping pong diplomacy between the United States and the PRC, or US musical and other performing arts exchanges between the United States and the Soviet Union. Of course, these are back during the Cold War, but they were ways to start to connect those societies that ultimately did lead to greater economic integration. And so I think that while the focus of this group is clearly an economic integration, I think sometimes these cultural things are help provide a pathway to the economics as well. So,
thank you. Very important. And Lou, you should connect. I think the cultural diplomacy is very, very important. I wanted to thank George Surin, and we did start in Mongolia, and there will be next September. I'm sure we'll be able to fly again, and if there's any way you could make it, you will love Mongolia. It's a very unique and very historic place, and a great place to study this issue, this question. So George Surin will come and visit you soon, next September.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, George Surin, you said you had a 37-page paper. Please pass that along to us.
Okay, thank you very much. I will send you that.
And if anybody else has something like that, please do. We want to start collecting those. And you're all on the front lines here. So your input, your advice is critical to this issue, which is critical to the world. Any last comment for Don? Why don't you go ahead? Say sure.
Well, there are many paths to unification. I would call everybody's attention. Carnegie just came out with their report on unification and outside power by Chung-Min Lee, and it's very interesting. North Korea needs China. South Korea needs China and the U.S., okay, in terms of trading partners. But the broader issue, and some people have given this some serious thought, I have, is that China has allowed North Korea to tinker in the area of development of long-range missiles and nuclear weapons for the purpose of drawing the world's attention to North Korea, while China succeeds in its hegemony of the South China Sea, building airfields in the Purcells and the Spratlys, and now building their third physical aircraft carrier. So as long as the world is centered on the rogue North Korea and worried about North Korea's development of nuclear weapons, that takes attention away from what China is doing. And that's extraordinarily important because that's the area of diplomacy that we have to look at. China can go just like this and say, all right, we're going to pull the plug on nuclear power in Korea. Korea would have no choice but to acquiesce in doing that. So there are lots of baby steps towards unification. The huge problem is how to deal with China.
Okay, I think we, please send that Carnegie report over, Don. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Right.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, again, everybody's input. Ye-Ching Lee, do you have any comment to last word here?
No, yeah, thank you, everyone, for your participation. As John mentioned, this will be an ongoing effort. So welcome everyone to continue working together on this issue. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And please join Ye-Ching next month for the U.S.-China Korea Forum. You're all welcome.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, we should close now, yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to close. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll be in touch. And thank you for your input.
Thank you, John, for moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you.